morning, students. I'm HP Shrimal, Assistant Professor of English, Government College, Manglana. Dear students, yesterday we were reading Ode to the West Wind. Ode to the West Wind is an ode written by P.B. Shelley. We have read the first stanza of this poem. Today we are going to analyze this first stanza once again. First of all, we'll see the literary devices used in this stanza. And first of all, we take up personification. Personification means you attribute human qualities to inanimate objects, abstract ideas, and animals. In this stanza, you find that the poet addresses the wind as if the wind were a human being, and this is the first example of personification in this poem. The poet says, "O wild west wind." The wind is addressed, and this address is known as an apostrophe, and this is also an example of personification. Then autumn is personified. Autumn is presented as if it were a human being, and the west wind is called the breath of this autumn. In the third instance, you find that the poet uses the word multitudes for leaves. Multitudes means crowd, and the crowd word can only be used for human beings. If you say that there is a crowd, it never means that you are talking about inanimate objects or abstract things. It naturally means that you are talking of human beings. And when the poet is addressing the leaves as multitudes, it means the poet is addressing human beings, not inanimate objects. But in the poem we find that the word is used for inanimate things, that is the dead leaves, and therefore the dead leaves are personified, and the poet uses the word multitudes for them. In this way, in the first stanza, three examples are used of personification. Now we come to the next literary device that you find in this stanza, and that is oxymoron. Oxymoron means two quite contrary words are used together. For instance, you see unseen presence. When you use the word presence, it means something or somebody is physically there. But when you say that he or she is unseen, that cannot be true, because if somebody is physically present, it is but natural that he or she is visible to all others. But the poet uses the phrase unseen presence about the west wind, and the meaning is quite clear. The wind cannot be seen, it can only be felt, and therefore it's an apt expression, and it's an example of oxymoron, because unseen and presence are quite incompatible in ordinary usage. The second example is destroyer and preserver. You see it in the last line of this stanza. The wind has been called a destroyer and a preserver. These two words are quite opposite, because someone who is destroyer cannot be a preserver, or vice versa. But the wind is a destroyer and a preserver at the same time. We'll explain it. Why does the poet call the wind as a destroyer and a preserver later on? Now we come to the next literary device, that is simile. A simile is a comparison between two dissimilar things, and this comparison is stated with the use of the word as or like. In this stanza, three similes have been employed. At the first instance, the poet uses the word like to state a comparison between the west wind and an enchanter. In the second example, the poet uses simile to compare a seed with a corpse. And in the third example, the poet uses the simile to compare sweet birds with the flocks. Therefore, three similes have been employed in this stanza. Have you got the point? Now we come to the next literary device, that is transferred epithet. Transferred epithet means an adjective which should logically go with a noun is placed with a different noun. For example, winged seeds. We all know that seeds do not have wings, but the adjective winged has been placed before seeds, attributively used for seeds. It means seeds have wings, but that's not true. We don't have any wings with the seeds. In fact, the word winged should be used with the west wind. West wind has wings. With the help of these wings, the wind flies from here to there. And therefore, this adjective is transferred from the west wind to the seeds. And that's why it's an example of a transferred epithet. Now see, the second example is Azer's sister. Azer means blue. Sister of the spring, that is Zephyrs. Zephyrs or the spring wind is not blue, but the word Azer is used or qualifies spring wind. In fact, when the spring wind blows, the sky appears quite clear, that is quite clear or blue. The word should have been used with the sky, but here the poet has used this word the poet has used this word with the spring, and therefore it's an example of transferred epithet. Let us see some difficult words in this stanza. First, enchanter means magician. Pestilence, stricken. Stricken means affected. Multitude means crowd. Pestilence is an infectious disease. Charitist means carries. Azer means blue. Clarion means trumpet. Hues means color. Have you got the point? These are the difficult words in this stanza. Now let us see. Once again you see the point. And the first stanza. The poet says that the wind's unseen presence is felt. And this, because of this unseen presence, the dead leaves are scattered. Now see the beauty of the poem. In the very first stanza, the poet compares two things. Here, the wind is abstract. The abstract wind is compared with concrete enchanter. And the dead leaves are concrete. Concrete dead leaves are compared with abstract ghosts. This is a peculiar quality of Shelley, because Shelley frequently compares abstract things with concrete and vice versa. Now see, you see that the wind has been called a destroyer and a preserver. How can it be true? The wind destroys dead leaves, but at the same time, the wind preserves seeds. And therefore, the use of the phrase destroyer and preserver is quite compatible or quite true. I repeat once again, the wind destroys dead leaves and preserves seeds, and therefore the description of the wind in the first stanza is as a destroyer and a preserver. Have you got the point? Now see, there is one biblical allusion in the first stanza. You see that each like a corpse within its grave, until thine aged sister of the spring shall blow her clarion over the dreaming earth. You see these lines in the first stanza. Now see, what is the biblical allusion? In Bible, it's written that when somebody dies, we bury him, and after his burial, the angels of resurrection come over his grave and blow their trumpet. With the sound of the trumpet, the souls of the dead person, the soul of the dead person comes out and follow the angels of resurrection for the doomsday or the day of judgment. Have you got the point? The same is true about the seeds. The seeds are compared with dead bodies and they are buried underground. And when they are buried underground, after a certain time, spring wind blows her clarion, and with the sound of that clarion, germination takes place. This germination is like just like the souls coming out of the grave for the day of judgment. In this way, the spring wind refers to the angels of resurrection, and seeds refer to dead bodies. Have you got the point? This biblical allusion has also been used in the first stanza. Is that clear? Now, in the first stanza, you see the second last line of the first stanza, wild spirit which art moving everywhere. This is again a very important expression of this ode. The poet says, the west wind moves everywhere. It means the west wind is omnipresent. Dear students, there are three adjectives: omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent. These three adjectives can only be used for God. And when the poet says that the wind is omnipresent, he is godifying the west wind. And why is he godifying the west wind? Because later in this poem, the poet appeals to the west wind to remove his sorrows. And when you want to appeal, when you want to request, when you want to invoke somebody, you will have to assume that he is superior to you, or you will have to godify him. And that's why the poet is godifying the west wind, and he says that the west wind is omnipresent. Is that clear? Now I think that the first stanza is quite clear to you. In this stanza, the poet describes the power of the west wind on earth. Now we'll take up the second stanza in the next class, and in that stanza we will see the power of the wind in the sky. Thank you. Keep watching.